Pope Francis shocks world, endorses Donald Trump for president. Did this headline fool you? This headline was one of the most prolific fake news stories that circulated the web during 2016. Please join me in taking a closer look at this new term of fake news to uncover some of the truth behind it. I would also like to thank Dr. Song for guiding me in this research. Because of the recent use of the term fake news and the divisiveness of the topic, there are many definitions for fake news. Fake news for this research is defined as deliberately false stories that appear to come from credible journalistic sources. These stories specifically manipulate design features to impact the reader's thinking and judging processes. Fake news is not a new phenomenon. In the United States, the use of purposely false news stories largely began in the 1890s, during a media war between newspaper owners Joseph Pulitzer and William Hearst. Interlocked in a competition of selling newspapers, the two began to embellish their stories. This practice became known as yellow journalism. Recently, the term of fake news gained public notoriety after becoming a political issue by Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential election. Fake news during the 2016 election dominated the scene, with the top 20 false election stories producing over 1 million more interactions on Facebook than the top 20 true election stories. Creators of fake news are largely driven by economic incentives and are not all based in the United States. One example is Macedonia. In a country with mass unemployment, creating fake news offers lucrative income to youth due to penny-per-click advertising. It's reported some teens in Macedonia earn $27,000 in a month from fake news. In country, Justin Kohler, a 40-year-old man living in the suburbs of Los Angeles, owns the well-known fake news company Disinfo Media. Although Kohler credits part of his motivation to wanting to infiltrate and discredit the alt-right, he also receives $10,000 to $30,000 a month from his company, which he admits is a great incentive. The consequences of fake news are undeniably serious. In 2016, a man opened fire in pizza shop Comet Ping Pong because he believed a fake news story that claimed the pizzeria was a front for child trafficking. Believers of the story still call to regularly harass the pizzeria, and one person set a small fire in February 2019. Fake news also sows confusion. Among U.S. adults, 2 in 3 believe fake news creates confusion about the facts of current issues. With news media distracted from more important issues due to a need to cover fake news, there is credit in this statement. There is also some belief that fake news could affect voting patterns, though this is still hotly debated. This led me to question, why do people believe fake news? Some research has suggested social media use, news consumption levels, age, and other factors contribute to a person's ability to distinguish fake news. However, I focused on political knowledge level and partisanship in this research. I decided to study this question with an in-class design survey that was distributed to the student body at the liberal arts college, Lyon College. Ultimately, we received 82 responses from the students. I would like to thank my media and politics classmates for their collaboration in creating this survey and distributing it. My interest was piqued in looking at political knowledge as a factor because of a 2018 study by Guess. The study found visits to fake news websites did not measurably decrease among the most politically knowledgeable individuals. This just seems contrary to basic simple logic. To measure political knowledge in the survey, I asked 5 political questions, 3 related to domestic politics and 2 related to international politics. I also asked the respondents to look at 10 headlines and mark whether they believed them to be true or false. 5 of the headlines were true news stories, and 5 of the headlines were false news stories. Ultimately, I did not find any statistically significant connection between political knowledge and ability to recognize fake news. However, we did stumble upon the finding that party identification affects one's judgment ability. Republican respondents were less likely to recognize fake news in the survey. I then turned to observing how partisan cues or indications of party identity in headlines could affect fake news belief patterns. This was inspired by another study by Guess in 2018 that found partisan fake news headlines to be rated as accurate at higher rates than their nonpartisan counterparts. Measuring this was a bit more difficult. I asked respondents to identify themselves as Republican, Democrat, or Independent. In the 10 headlines section, where respondents rated true or false, the 5 fake news headlines were also secretly divided into 2 groups, appealing to Republicans or appealing to Democrats. Of the 5 fake news headlines, only 2 of the headlines had statistically significant results. Both of the headlines were appealing to Republicans. For these headlines, Republicans were less likely than Democrats to correctly identify the headline as false, meaning they were more likely to believe these Republican appealing headlines. To sum everything up, political knowledge does not affect a person's ability to recognize fake news. However, party identification and partisan cues do. Republicans are less able to detect fake news than Democrats. Similarly, in fake news with partisan cues appealing to Republicans, Democrats are better at recognizing the fake news stories. My research is incredibly relevant because of the continued prevalence of fake news today. During the still ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the plethora of fake news articles has created what some are calling a disinfodemic. These stories are extremely dangerous because they create mass confusion about the COVID-19 virus. Beyond a danger to health, fake news can also be a danger to democracy. Freedom of press is established in the First Amendment to our Constitution because of how important media is to democracy. However, fake news is undermining belief in media and polluting the media's job to educate the public on current events and issues. By knowing more about why people believe fake news, we can work together to stem the tide of fake news. The most effective way to stem the spread of fake news, however, is through a simple fact check before spreading. Next time you come across a news story, check one of the multiple fact-checking websites to determine if it's really a fact or fake.